In Venezuela, where 95 countries take part in the First World Congress against Fascism and Neo-Fascism, more than 300 delegates debate strategies of struggle against fascist right wing in the world. In Mexico, the Senate approved on Wednesday the judicial reform promoted by President Andrés Manuel López Obrador after sabotage attempts sponsored by right-wing groups. And in the United States, the presidential candidates Donald Trump and Kamala Harris participated in the first presidential debate ahead of the elections on November 5th. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, where 95 countries take part in the First World Congress against Fascism and Neo-Fascism, the two-day event began on Tuesday with the presence of more than 300 intellectuals, writers, communicators, and leaders of the anti-fascist world. Participants debate strategies of struggle and progress against the unstable workings of the West. Likewise, the Congress' objective is to take concrete actions against Western interferences. This Wednesday, a plan of action is to be developed, coordinated among all the sectors and actors focused on neutralizing the effects of the fascist right wing in the world. And in Venezuela, human rights activist and defender Michelle Mader participated in the World Congress against Neo-Fascism and other similar activities held in La Carlota, where representatives from more than 95 countries share common ground on an issue that puts the whole world at risk.
I knew I had a father, but I never saw him. And I learned in school, when I was very little, I was 3 years old, 3.5 years old, and a little girl told me that my father had died in a crematorium oven. And I didn't know what a crematorium oven was. And when I got home, I asked my mother what crematorium oven meant. And I didn't get an answer, so I grew up with the idea that I had a father who had died in a crematorium oven. And I stayed for years with that idea. I would watch my mother prepare packages to send to someone. And I assumed she was sending packages to my father. And packages that, later on, I know never arrived. I had to learn what fascism was, precisely in order to learn to continue my life, to grow up in this period of the Second World War with a lot of what was not said, a lot of silence.
In Colombia, at least 10 people were injured and one of them seriously after a grenade exploded outside a police station in Bogota. Local authorities are investigating the incident, which has raised community concerns about security in the capital. The explosion occurred at a time of increasing violence in the country, with armed groups stepping up their attacks. Police have tightened security in the area and are on high alert. This attack adds to a series of recent incidents that have affected security forces in Colombia, prompted authorities to redouble efforts to combat crime and restore public confidence. Investigations continue to determine the perpetrators of this violent act. In Mexico, the judicial reform was approved in general in the Senate after a long session in which Morena achieved a qualified majority. The final vote was 86 votes in favor and 41 against, and included a violent reaction from the PAN opposition, which tried at various times to stop the discussion. Its promoters described the reform as historical, claiming it aims to guarantee that every person has real access to justice through a profound change in the organization and integration of the various bodies that make up the federal judicial power and the local judicial powers. Senator Gerardo Fernández Noroña announced the approval as the long session came to an end.
According to the vote count, a total of 127 votes were cast, of which 86 were in favor, 41 against, and 0 abstentions, thus meeting the qualified majority required for the approval of the decree.
There is a qualified majority, therefore it is approved in general and in everything not reserved of the draft decree amending, adding, and revoking various provisions of the political constitution of the 11 Mexican states in matters of reform of the judiciary.
In this context, President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum welcomed the approval of the judicial reform on X. Sheinbaum wrote, "I congratulate the senators of our movement for the approval of the judicial reform with the election of judges, magistrates, and ministers. The administration of justice in our country will be strengthened. The regime of corruption and privileges is becoming a thing of the past, and a true democracy and the rule of law are being built. Demos means people, Kratos, power, the power of the people. In Chile, a young man was murdered in the march remembering the victims of the Pinochet dictatorship last Sunday, September 8th, in an attack of fascist character. The government is keeping silent, and the media is keeping the identity of the alleged assailant a secret, raising the suspicions of the victim's family and friends.
The hearing was closed, and the identity of the alleged murderer, who was remanded in custody, was also protected.
Indeed, he identified himself on several occasions as a countermarcher. That is to say that he was against the demonstration that was taking place.
And it was none other than the traditional pilgrimage for human rights that remembers the victims of the Pinochet dictatorship 51 years after the coup d'etat against Salvador Allende. A demonstration that was intensely repressed by carabineros from the moment it started.
We are not afraid of them. We have the right to honor our own.
At the end of the march, the younger protesters responded to the attacks by the police, and it was there that, without any discussion, a man in civilian clothes took out a knife and stabbed 3 demonstrators. The images only became known during Sunday night through official channels and with the government's version, which tries to show the attack as a fight between private individuals.
There is a person arrested in the context of this criminal act, but the relationship with the pilgrimage has not been completely determined. Therefore, I would be prudent in this respect. The investigation will be able to determine if it is related or not.
Why does the government seek to disguise this attack that was openly against the demonstrators? For the family and friends, there is no doubt. The other 2 stabbed youths, still hospitalized, reported that the aggressor was near a Carabineros picket line, identified himself as anti-marchers, and insulted them with fascist shouts before attacking them. This is one of the few citizen videos of the alleged murderer, minutes after stabbing the youths. He was rebuked by other demonstrators who assisted the wounded, while the subject was immediately arrested. Despite carrying a weapon, in the exclusive images of national television of Chile, some other details can be seen. A treatment reminiscent of the murderers who fatally shot community member Francisca Sandoval, also at a march in 2022 at the beginning of Gabriel Boric's government. Fascist attacks in the hands of civilians are repeated.
The magistrate understands that the defendant acted with total disregard for the life of my client and the interests of his family.
A contempt that seems to extend to government authorities who have remained silent about this murder that ended the life of 26-year-old Alonso Verdejo in the midst of a march that repudiates the worst of fascism incarnated in Augusto Pinochet.
teleSUR, Chile.
Let's now take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In the United States, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump engaged in a tense confrontation during the only presidential debate U.S. citizens will likely see before going to the polls in November. The presidential candidates crossed strong accusations on sensitive issues such as economy, migration, abortion, healthcare, and foreign policy, while also dodging direct questions from moderators on future policy plans. Trump assured that under his presidency there would never have been a war with Ukraine. In turn, Harris accused him of supporting Russian President Putin. During the face-off, Latin America and the Caribbean were scarcely and negatively alluded to, as Trump attacked Haitian and Hispanic immigrants, which, together with his questioning of Harris' ethnic background, prompted the current vice president to warn about the divisive approach.
I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
In turn, former U.S. President Donald Trump criticized the Biden-Harris administration for its alleged lack of action during the current term.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it?
Also during the debate, when questioned about their stand on the ongoing Israeli genocide of the Palestinian people, both candidates ratified Israel's right to defend itself, with Vice President Harris highlighting the two-state solution option and backing the current administration's support for the Zionist regime.
And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters, because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
The Israeli forces keep up the siege against the Palestinian civilian population. In the past couple of hours, they have slaughtered over 27 Gazans, while the U.S. presidential nominees ratified their support for Israel's right to defense, as the U.S. is the main partner in the genocidal operation of the Zionist regime against Palestine. On Wednesday, the Israeli troops have been dropping bombs on a residential building in Han Yunis, claiming 13 lives. Meanwhile, the army killed a fisherman nearby Al-Mawasi, and minutes later, the Israeli forces attacked the Jabalia refugee camp, leaving 9 deaths, including 3 children and 2 women. The Israeli army further mounted an incursion into an apartment building in Nuseirat, Gaza's downtown, bringing about 4 fatal victims and 11 injured. In this context, United Nations Secretary General spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said that the UN condemns the attacks perpetrated by the Israeli army in Han Yunis refugee camp in Gaza. Dujarric assured that the Secretary General considers unacceptable the use of weapons in populated areas. The spokesman reiterated that there is currently no safe place in Gaza and appealed on behalf of the agency for an immediate ceasefire. According to health authorities, occupation forces have killed nearly 41,000 Palestinians since last October. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. Heat waves and droughts have triggered wildfires in the Amazon rainforest for over a week, stretching unhealthy air quality not only in Brazil but also in Paraguay and Bolivia, according to data collected by the Air Quality Index. In response, 37 military firefighters from Brazil's National Public Security Force are working on putting out wildfires in the Bolivian border strip. Moreover, the Center for Preventing and Combating Forest Fires of Brazil are leading efforts to extinguish 41 wildfires in the Pantanal wetland region. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Education of Paraguay decided on Monday to close schools nearby the wildfires as the air quality has been worsening. In this context, Brazilian President Luis Ignacio da Silva touched on the ongoing climate emergency.
Our forests and rivers are a barrier against the climate catastrophe that threatens the planet. That's why the whole world is watching Brazil right now. As you can see here, the drought is coming more systematically. It's not happening gradually.
And the Vietnamese Department of Dike Management and Disaster Prevention and Control reported at least 143 deaths and 58 others are missing following the passage of Typhoon Yagi. The most hit areas are Dien Bai, Cao Ban, and Lao Cai localities, while in Bao Yen district, severe landslides had been recorded. The Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam in Lao Cai and other senior government authorities are directly in charge of leading the search and rescue efforts. Meanwhile, the Central Committee of the Vietnam Fatherland Front launched a campaign to support the victims of Typhoon Yagi. In Laos, flash floods in the wake of Typhoon Yagi brought destruction in north flooding villages and farmland, as authorities reported one person dead. The worst hit provinces were Luang Mantha and Phong Sali, where residents had to shelter on upper floors and wade chests deep through murky waters. In this context, Luang Mantha Deputy District Chief Sivalai Pankwep said over 300 people from 17 villages were evacuated, while the UN's World Food Programme said to be very concerned for the safety of communities in northern Laos.
During my work I saw houses were underwater. Many cows died while chickens and ducks were on rooftop. This storm was quite big. I haven't seen it like this since I was young.
Meanwhile, Typhoon Yagi claimed 4 lives in northern Thailand and flooded thousands of homes. In response, the government mobilized the army to help affected families. Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra stated that aid is on the way to around 9,000 families in the northern provinces of Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai. For its part, the Health Ministry deployed medical staff, volunteers and rescue workers to migrate elder people to safer places. The Thai Meteorological Department also warned that more heavy rains were expected, bringing the risk of fresh flash floods.
The flood destroyed some of the wall. The flood water reached chest level. In some areas, the water level almost reached the roof of a 2-level house. So that's why people need to seek shelter on the roof. Now the flood continues to rise. It is my first time seeing flooding like this in my 30 years of living here.
On Tuesday, Indian authorities decreed a curfew and temporarily put off internet services in the northern region in a bid to quell clashes between the Meitei and the Kuki communities. The conflict started in May 2023 and has claimed over 220 lives, as Kukis are demanding Meiteis to provide them official tribal status. Currently, Meiteis inhabit the Imphal Valley, while Kukis live in the surrounding hill areas, Manipur state. In this context, and in an attempt to bring peace, the government enacted the curfew for the Imphal Valley and surrounding districts, while internet service has been called off in the whole Manipur state. Meanwhile, domestic security forces have been trying to repel clashes between the rival communities. At the Simón Bolívar International Airport in the state of La Guaira in north-central Venezuela, the athletes from this country who competed in the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games held from August 28th to September 8th were received with joy. Let's see the details.
Some of the Venezuelan athletes who participated in the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games were welcomed with music, family, and friends.
It is exciting to thank God, and it is complete for all Paralympians because it has not been easy to get there. To the highest event to give everything for our country. for our family, and we saw the result that people, Venezuelan people, are very strong.
Here is the job done. It is done. Mission accomplished, soldier. As we say, proud to have brought our medal to Venezuela. There are others coming too. It is good that we are going to receive them. We keep on working. We have other accounts pending, but we keep on working for what is coming again towards the cycle of the next sports game.
25 athletes put the name of Venezuela on high, achieving a total of 6 Olympic medals, 3 gold, 2 silver and 1 bronze, and 12 Olympic medals.
I brought my message for people who want to motivate themselves. Especially my message is directed to people who have some kind of disability. The message is to set a goal, to have clear goals, because dreams do come true. What for me before was a dream is now a reality.
Not only the medals and diplomas obtained, but also the significant contribution of these athletes to the national sport.
We improved 5 places in relation to Tokyo. What does this tell us? What does it mean? That there is a development of the sport at all levels.
With applause and euphoria, these athletes toured the west of the Venezuelan capital.
Our people's power receiving those athletes who, with enthusiasm, dedication and a lot of care, raised the tricolor flag in the Paris 2024 game.
Thanks to its outstanding performance, the Venezuelan Federation ranked 34th in the world, an important advance that highlights the potential of the national sport.
Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.